Hey, Cashflow Ninjas, real quick before we jump into today's episode, I've been asked by many people recently, what has been the one thing that has made all the difference on my journey as a business owner and investor? I started businesses and I've invested in businesses. I've invested in single family real estate, multifamily real estate. I still have a sizable portfolio of multifamily real estate, historic resorts, mobile home parks, oil and gas, life settlements, gold and silver, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. I could go on. But the one thing that has changed the financial trajectory for myself and my family has been infinite banking. Yes, you heard that correctly. That is the number one thing I've done over the past 2 decades that have made the single biggest difference. And it's not even close. Setting up and building out a family banking system using infinite banking has enabled me to create my own financial system. This year, it has allowed me to focus and not pay attention to all the chaos in the global economy and global financial markets. I really don't pay attention to all the noise about tariffs, trade wars, markets violently going down and then going back up, or interest rates skyrocketing and wrecking real estate deals and other alternative investment deals. Do not be beholden to other systems. Create your own system. If you're interested in working with me and my team at Producers Wealth to set up your own banking system or your own business and family banking system, then go to getwealthyforsure.com. That's getwealthyforsure.com. When you go to getwealthyforsure.com, you can request a free copy of my best-selling book, Get Wealthy for Sure. Only pay for shipping. You can also watch all of our presentations and schedule a call to explore infinite banking options with me and my team. You don't have to be powerless amidst the chaos. You too can have a financial strategy that provides certainty, predictability, and clarity. You and your family can also get wealthy for sure. Go to getwealthyforsure.com to start your journey today.
The world is going through changes. Changes happening at a speed that we have never seen before. This is leading to disruption, chaos, panic, fear, hysteria, and a turbulent economy and marketplace. How do you protect your wealth in a turbulent world? How do you invest for cash flow in alternative assets to escape the rat race in times of uncertainty? How do you decentralize yourself, your family, your community, your business, and your investments to become sovereign and escape the matrix? If you are looking for strategies, tactics, and techniques to escape the rat race and matrix, you are in the right place. My name is MC Laubscher, and this is Cashflow Ninja. This is Cashflow Ninja. I'm MC Laubscher. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode and spending your most valuable resource, your time, once again with me on the show. Everything Cashflow Ninja is at cashflowninja.com. That's cashflowninja.com. We've got over 1,000 podcast episodes, 4 books, reports, webinars, and much, much more, all at cashflowninja.com. And don't forget to subscribe to the #1 newsletter in the alternative wealth strategy and alternative asset investing space, the Wealth Dojo. You can subscribe to the Wealth Dojo by going to cashflowninja.com/subscribe. I've got a fantastic show for you today. I'm joined by Austin here. Austin is an entrepreneur, investor. He's got an extremely interesting background, being a former professional wakeboarder and also an American ninja warrior. So we're bringing all the ninjas together here today on the Cashflow Ninja. Austin, great to see you.
Hey, man. Great to be here. How's it going?
Yeah, it's been great. It's been great to connect. I've been looking forward to our conversation today. For my listeners and viewers that's not familiar with you and what you do, could you please share a little bit about your background and journey and what you get up to today?
Yeah, so I got into real estate through professional athleticism or professional sports, kind of like you, except it wasn't rugby, it was wakeboarding. So I started wakeboarding in 2006. I moved to Orlando and I started doing this thing called like house hacking, more like rent hacking, where essentially I would take on the master lease of the house as, take on the risk, sign a long-term lease, and then I would rent out the individual rooms with the goal of getting my rent for free for taking on the risk. So I did that for a while, for enough time to build up a down payment for a house. And then I ended up buying a house. Luckily, it was 2011, April, right at the very bottom of the market.
Nice.
And so yeah, it was awesome. So I filmed the rooms with wakeboarders and I was getting paid to live there. Now that's kind of hard to replicate now, but it was like a 4-bedroom house with a guest house, 2 stories on the lake, with a pool and a hot tub. I mean, it was like my dream house at the time. And continue. And then, continue to wakeboard, rent it out. That gave me enough kind of financial freedom to buy a second house, kind of did the same thing. And then, I kind of honestly pumped the brakes on residential real estate for a little while. I was like what you call a slumlord. I had a bunch of tenants that were like long-term in my first property that were not taking care of the house. I ended up kind of just, as I was retiring from wakeboarding around, around 2013, I opened up some gyms as a part-time thing, wanted to wakeboard. Around 2017, I started to retire from wakeboarding and really focus more on the gyms. And then it was the site selection of the gyms that got me into commercial real estate. So there's kind of like all these different stories kind of happening at the same time. I'm sure, your life is very similar too. Like nothing happens in like a nice, clean start stop. There's a lot of overlap.
Yeah.
So around like 2015, so this is kind of in between all this, 2015, 2016, I was so fed up with the long-term rent of the houses. Like there was knife marks in the drywall from people partying. They had left their free weights, their workout rates in the bottom of the pool, and it was staining it. And the yard was totally overgrown. I threw it up in the MLS as a for sale by owner. Was not happy. Like I realized it was just gonna be way too much work to clean up this property. So I was like, look, before I sell it, let's just throw it on Airbnb. And I did that, and it like actually went really, really well. We like our top line revenue was like 36,000, like $3,000 a month at the time. And then it went up immediately to like, almost 70, 80,000. And then now today we're doing between like 150 and 160,000 top line revenue from back then because we keep improving the property. So I was like, oh, you know what? Yeah, I kind of like this. So I didn't really focus on that full time. It was just like, this was a nice, income stream. And then I ended up, the house that I lived at was a duplex. So we said like, hey, let's throw the bottom half on Airbnb. Let's see how that goes. And then because of the gyms and doing the site selection, I started working with my partner where we started doing site selection for healthcare groups. And so we would do dental and derm and medical, and we would try and find out the places that were the best sites, would run our analysis. And the goal was to be the ones who would buy and develop or lease back to the healthcare operator. So there's the 1,000-foot overview, and happy to dive into any one of those things.
Yeah, one of the things that you did not mention that I want to make sure we bring in too is it fits really nice with the theme of the show here, the Cashflow Ninja. You also have been a participant in American Ninja Warrior, right? So like I wanted to bring that up. So we got a ninja on the show, not just Cashflow, but a real ninja.
Yeah, so I retired from wakeboarding in 2017. The last thing I wanted to do was beat up my body again. But in the beginning of 2020, late like December 2019, January 2020, my wife was like, hey, we got to do this ninja thing. Like I've always wanted to do it. And she has a disease, like a autoimmune disease called ankylosing spondylitis, where like, she has really, really, really bad, painful days. But on her good days, she's like extremely athletic. So she's like, I want to show people, what you can accomplish. And I'm like, okay, fine. Like if you twist my arm, I'll go to the gym with you. And within a week, I was just like totally hooked. So now we do that like 3 days a week, which is essentially as much as our bodies can handle. But it's we were on the show. We were featured on the couples edition. She's been on this show more than I have now. She's been on it 3 times. I've been on the regular season 2 times. Made it all the way to the finals, the national finals, which was awesome. But it's just a fun way to stay in shape. I think it's important to play. I mean, I feel like a lot of people listening to this show are like us. We're just like very maybe type A driven. We want to be productive and do all these things. And I do too. And then we forget like, oh yeah, there's there's more to life, right? Than just like being productive and accomplishing things. And so like ninja just helps me kind of go, you swing from things, you learn how to do a new obstacle. You feel really good. It keeps you in shape. So look, I'm not trying to win the whole show. If I can just get invited back and have a good performance in the first round, like I'm happy because it's a lot of fun.
So you were saying you're going to the gym. Is there like a ninja gym, like where these American Ninja Warriors train, like the obstacle courses?
Yeah, so we live in Orlando, and that's a big reason why we have been able to do so well in the show is because we're lucky to have a nice gym here in town. It's called like Obstacle Ninja Academy, but it's like this massive 16,000 square foot facility. And yeah, they absolutely do make ninja specific gyms. So back at, there's been 17 seasons now. So 17 years ago, this was a new concept and there was no ninja gym, obviously, right? Like all the rock climbers want it because there's no way to kind of train for these obstacles. And now that the shows got so popular, there's gyms like all over the country, and kids who are now 16 years old have been training their entire lives. Even like a 20-year-old kid would have been could have theoretically trained at a gym since he was 3 or 4. And that's who's winning these things because like they dedicate all their time, and it's a very, very specific sport now. Like it's not like you can just kind of dabble in it. I mean, you got to be focused.
It's the more you learn about business, right, and the more conversations you have, it's just incredible to realize the niches that is there. There's like an entire I can see it just in the way that you explain it. There's this entire industry around just American Ninja Warrior now with the gym. Yeah. I can probably see strength and conditioning, supplements. Like I could just see the whole thing. It's almost like the joke in Spaceballs, the movie where he was saying there merchandise,
yeah, totally,
all the stuff.
There's franchises that have gyms, like they have a few locations that are growing, and I mean, yeah, it's like listen, it's a fraction the size of rock climbing as an example, but it's definitely a growing sport that has a surprisingly large. I mean, at the World Championships, like there's thousands and thousands and thousands of people who show up there. But that's like the people who actually qualified and who committed the time and the resources to travel out there. There's way more than that who like kind of will go and compete and not go to the World Championships. So yeah, it's kind of mind-boggling.
It's incredible. The one thing that you mentioned in your story that resonated with me too is you were involved as a professional wakeboarder, and as you were doing that, it kind of like started for you were like, I got to do something else too. I got to put my money somewhere, and that's how you got into the house hacking thing. Was that what was the moment that you realized, okay, I got to build something else outside of this because this is not going to last forever? Because I at that moment too, where I'm like, all right, I got to do something to fall back onto or not squander a perfect opportunity to build up resources and assets, that I can eventually go to when this ride ends.
Yeah, well, I think like a lot of kids, when I'm 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, even 18, it's like, hey, I'm going to be a professional athlete and I'm going to retire by the time I'm 29 and I'm never going to have to work again. Right. Or 25, whatever it is. Like that's kind of, that's what you think. And then I read the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, where probably a lot of listeners have listened to that. And that's when I was like, okay, cool. Like this is I need to get into real estate. Like this is a interesting model. And at the time it was like, it wasn't really changing anything of my plans. It was just like, hey, I might as well I got to live somewhere, right? I might as well kind of do these things to help me get my goal of like retiring at 29. Well, as I got older, I think it was probably like around 24, 25, or maybe even 22. I kind of realized like, in sports, your income kind of goes like this. It's a bell curve. It goes up and then it starts to come back down. In business, it kind of just slowly builds. So yeah, it was around 20, I would say 2015 when I was like, yeah, I probably should be focusing more on business and then my wakeboarding career because like my body's not going to last forever. So I remember like thinking of that specific graph in my head. And so, at the time I had a couple pieces of real estate, like 2 properties, but it was like, I kind of need to transition probably into this gym thing. And I did. And I don't know, do you know Alex Tramosi?
Yes, of course.
So we worked with him back in 2017, right when he was getting started. And I retired from wakeboarding, did his program, focused full time on it for 2 years, and it just exploded. I mean, it was awesome. Like, meeting with him, going to the conferences, like having the daily calls with him, he
Was
imparted
that
so much
the
wisdom.
gym? Not to interrupt you, was that the gym thing? Because
Yeah, that was the gym. That was the
gym
gym
launch
business.
or
Yep,
something. He
gym
had like
launch. Correct. Yep. So
okay,
we were some of the early guys, and it worked great. And so luckily, I sold mostly because I disagreed with the franchisor in 2019, right before COVID. And to be honest, like he did such a good job selling it, he was oversaturated. Like it wasn't going to last. There was like a short time window for that. I mean, it was too good to last, really, because we were just printing so much money. But I got lucky. I timed it at the top. I was able to sell for a multiple of profits, which is like so rare in the gym business. And then my partner invited me to start working with him on the commercial real estate side. So then that's when I was like, and then I thought about it too. I was like, man, you know what? My dollar per hour rate is like so much higher in real estate because I just invested so little time into this. That was kind of like another epiphany moment. So I like the Airbnb thing. We continue to acquire Airbnb properties. We got a wedding venue luxury rental in 2022. Then we got another luxury rental and wedding venue in 2024. And now we're buying a portfolio of luxury rentals that all sleep like 40 to 55 people. And in addition to some of the, commercial retail development in the background.
awesome. Tell me what's going on with the Airbnb, and obviously I love that how you mention it too, luxury rentals. So you're operating at the top where there's still a lot of people having a lot of success in Airbnb that caters on the luxury side and the top 1%, right? If you're just throwing a room together in a house and buying IKEA furniture and throwing up, I think that gig is done, and that's probably where a lot of people have lost a lot of money. But what's going on in your world? What markets are you in, and what's the latest update there?
Yeah, that's 100% true. Well, in my opinion, I think it's a very just complicated or competitive model to, throw some furniture in a studio. You're competing with hotels at that stage, right? And you're very cookie cutter. You're a commodity, unfortunately. So yeah, I think a lot of people who have those, like even like your 2 and 3, sometimes 4 bedroom houses, there's a lot of those, right? That you can get commoditized. And so in my opinion, you have to do something to separate yourself from the market. You specifically, you have to really separate yourself from the hotels. So I've never been interested in that model. I've always been interested in houses that are unique and have unique stays, and I also have like land, having a lot of land where you can have privacy. So, our houses in Orlando, they all are on the lake, and they have pools, they have hot tubs, they have putting greens, they have bocce ball courts, and we're always doing things to like expand them, and then you have like workout places and saunas and cold plunges. And then it's also about the head count. So like we try, they all sleep at least 16 people in our wedding venue down here, or up to 24. Our wedding venue in Ohio, in Cleveland, we're up to 27, with the goal of getting that like to 30 and 40 respectively. And so, first of all, yes, it's luxury. Second of all, when you break down the price per head, it's very affordable. And then the third thing is like, Trump has a good quote that he says, there's always a market for the best. So if you're always trying to be the best, then like if you're in a similar price point to other people, then they're going to pick you, right? And so let's just say we go through some sort of economic pullback at some point. Like personally, I don't think we're really risking that right now. But if you do, well, if you've got the nicest property, you're still going to be the one who gets booked, right? Like if everybody's cutting their prices, then you're still going to at least hopefully maintain your expenses, where other people, like you were mentioning earlier, might lose a lot and or might lose money. And so, yeah, especially when it comes to like a studio, a lot of those people don't own the real estate. And so, look, from a cash flow financial engineering perspective, I totally get the benefit of like not having to pay the house. Like 20% down payment is a huge amount of capital. But either way, you got to furnish the house and do your renovations or whatever. So we're just like specifically looking at the cash that you can use for the down payment. And yes, it's true. If you're not buying it, you just needed the first and last month's deposit. You can take that money, you can put that into other properties, you can replicate it over and over again. But this is not like your typical kind of business. Like it's not like a coffee shop where what you're selling is coffee. It's not like a dental group where what you're selling is, oral care. What you're selling is the 4 walls. And so if you don't own that property, in my opinion, it's just a big risk, because how long is your lease? Are you signing a 1-year lease? Okay. Will they, you don't know that they're going to renew you. But if you can sign a 10-year lease, okay, now we're talking maybe. But also, like, do you want to be in that location for 10 years at a time? And I've never heard of anybody selling like doing a 10-year. The most I've heard of is 3. So I'm just thinking, like, from an equity perspective, like if I'm trying to create a business that I can sell and have equity in it, and I got a 3-year lease, well, a year and a half into my business, I've only got a year and a half left on my lease. Like who's going to buy that, right? So yeah, it's great for cash flow, it's great for upfront cash flow, but I just don't know that you're building any equity long term. So that's kind of why we've always just thought like, hey, let's try and buy the real estate, even if that slows us down from scaling. because we have our equity in the properties.
Do you still see that strategy though of how a lot of people put properties just under contract with through a lease and then Airbnb it? Because that
100%.
at
Yeah.
one stage was like a hot thing, and you had a bunch of gurus running around teaching people, hey, how to become an Airbnb, millionaire without owning any properties and just doing that. But I kind of thought that kind of faded out a little bit. But there's still people doing that.
I think it's faded out. I still definitely see people doing that. And to be clear, you can make money, right?
Yeah.
It's just, I don't think you're going to build any equity. So whenever your lease is done, your business is done, right? And that's the thing that they don't tell you. And then what do you do with that furniture that you bought brand new? You've had it for 3 years. You're going to have to sell that at a big loss, if you can't find a place to relocate it to. So that's just kind of my opinion. So yeah, look, I think that there's still a good market for people who want to do something unique and different. Now it's getting more competitive. I mean, when I started this, so I didn't actually mention this a second ago. I told you that I had my other property on Airbnb, which is true. But the very first experience I had with Airbnb was at the duplex that I was living in when I was traveling for wakeboarding. I would go out of town on the weekends, and I would put up my place for rent with all my clothes in the closet, all the food in the fridge. Like, nobody cared. I mean, that was 9 years ago. It was such a different experience, but it rented out every single weekend. And I thought, okay, cool. Maybe there's something here. I mean, you could never do that today. If there's a hair in the bed, they'll ask for a cancel. They'll ask for a cancel, which is just so ridiculous. But what that means is, like, you have to keep stepping it up. So like, we just, it's a hospitality business. It's not passive income. I think people should understand that too. You need to have like really good design. You need to have like updated amenities or honestly, like, do you need to have like the most recent modern kitchen? I mean, maybe. I think what's more important is having fun, immersive things for people to do. So the properties that we're acquiring here shortly have these crazy kind of like floor to ceiling themes where every room is interactive. Like, there's a laser maze room. There's a room that's Twister. So you put up the Murphy bed. There's all the dots on the floor. You spin it with the fan. You have custom pools that are all shaped like the theme of the house. Like, you have a billiard shaped pool for the game house. You have an custom shaped ice cream pool for the sweet escape house. And so like but they can sleep 40, 55 people. And that's the type of thing that's going to keep people coming back, is because when you get there, there's stuff to do, and you can't, how do you compare that to other things, right? Like, it's a one-of-one type experience, but it's a lot of work. So I don't know. There's a trade-off there.
Yeah, it's interesting when you just mentioned too of how you started in your first experiences. It's almost like you had all these cool sharing economy startups that like started at a certain time, right? You had like Airbnb, Uber. There was even, I don't even know if they're still around, couch surfing. It was like a company.
Oh yeah. I haven't heard of them in a long time, but I remember what you're talking about.
Yeah, I remember meeting a ton of people that couch surfed throughout Europe, and then they would take like 18 to 24 months and just be like, I'm just going to couch surf throughout the world, and they did. They basically backpacked and couch surfed, and what it was. The idea is like it's like a social media app where everybody's quote unquote couch surfers. And then you would just stay on someone else's couch, basically, I don't even think you paid any money at that stage, but it was more just people hanging out, same mentality, that kind of thing. But anyway, you had kind of like this startup, and to your point, kind of like that reminded me where you were at. And it looks like now it's like very, very corporate. Like you were saying, somebody finds a hair in a house. There's like a complaint or a negative review, or somebody wants a refund or a discount or something like that. So it's just crazy to see how it has changed. The other thing that I also wanted to bring up with you see a lot of price elasticity, right? Where you're at, because operating expenses for every business has gone up. Yeah. I've seen it obviously going up for Airbnbs operating those. And then obviously in some areas the bookings were down, so you kind of had a lot of people getting squeezed in certain markets. What are you seeing with yours?
100% that happened. You had revenge travel. So we had all of ours in Orlando, in Florida, back in 2020, which was awesome because we never locked down. Thankfully, I think we locked down for 3 weeks. I personally never locked down at all. I was just like in my car, going to the office, doing whatever. And nobody really cared. It was amazing. And everybody came to Florida and Orlando specifically. So like we lost all our bookings in February, and then we got all bookings back in March, like 100%, like 90, 95%. That gravy train lasted for about 2 years, but a ton of people got it in the market because they're like, oh, look at all this Airbnb, look at all these people traveling. Airbnb is making so much money. Interest rates are so low. The price of real estate was like obviously at that time low in hindsight, even though it was growing. That changed in 2020, mid 2022, when the interest rates started hiking. People still were trying to get into the game. Guys, had a couple properties that was doing well. They're trying to grow and scale. And especially the guys that we talked about that do the cookie cutter model, where it's just like IKEA furniture in a 3 or 4 bedroom house with nothing unique about it. Now you're paying higher interest rates. Now there's a ton more competition, but demand actually started to slump a little bit after revenge travel was over. So we saw a lack of supply coming on in really like 23 and part of 24 were pretty difficult. And then the supply, not only did they stop coming online, like the supply growth not only stopped growing, it actually started to shrink a little bit. Like people were actually coming off the platform. Like in Miami, for instance, there's 1,000 less listings this year than there were last year because a lot of the people trying to do the arbitrage model downtown, not conducive with rents where they're at now. So we've seen more pricing control and more pricing power as operators in 2025 than we did last year because, demand kind of went up way up like crazy and then went way down and then it's kind of stabilized. But as demand for the travel was dropping, so was supply at the same time. And so now that demand is kind of like rebounding to, historical normal levels, we have less supply and it's looking very optimistic for the future.
There's some markets too around Florida that, saw massive booms. And especially these are like right on the, like on the ocean too, right? So I'm thinking like the West Coast, we've gone there a couple of times, just outside of Tampa, Sarasota. There's Anna Maria Island is over there. It's been fascinating to watch that because they've also had the insurance problems, right, of being right on the ocean. And obviously when you get 3 category fours, I think it hit them 3 years in a row, that obviously doesn't help your insurance premiums, right? Those folks are struggling a little bit out there. What are some of the things that you've seen?
That's a good point. Look, it's very situational. It's very market dependent. So yeah, look, for me personally, there's a ton of markets that I'm not really interested in. Like I'm not really interested in Vail or Aspen, Colorado. You've got a lot of really wealthy people that want a second house that drive the price of real estate up. That makes it the yields lower. And then the same kind of things are happening in the markets you mentioned, where it's not that there's a lot of wealthy second owners, but there's hurricanes, right? And it's driving the cost of insurance up. And so insurance is something that you have to, you have to make sure that you're accounting for that in your cash flow. So it means some of the things that make Airbnb tricky compared to commercial real estate is you're paying the insurance, not your tenants. You're also paying the utilities, not your tenants. And so we have higher utilities in Florida. So when you just look at the cost of the house and the gross yield, a lot of times expenses can be higher than they let on. But that's why for me, my most important thing is the gross yield. So when I look at a property, either there's 2 things, right? You can buy on the historical revenue, which then you're going to be looking at a percentage of the gross yield, or you can buy, if there's no historical revenue, then you can buy on the comp rate. And so the trade-off there would be, if I'm buying on the historical revenue, I want a really high gross yield, right? Like the properties that we're under contract for, 32% gross yield, historical revenue. I mean, that's insane. Some people boast an 11% gross yield on their properties in the markets that you've mentioned. But if there is no historical, say it's a new property, well, then I'm going to be looking mostly at the price per square foot. And then I'm going to be projecting in my mind, okay, is it a good deal? Is it a good, price for the price per square foot? Because I'm going to have the belief that I can go in and I can make this property worth it. So when I'm looking at markets like the ones that you mentioned, I'm going to be looking at those 2 things. What's the historical gross yield, or what's the price per square foot? Is that a good price per square foot? And do I think that I can get a good yield? So for me, if they don't have historical revenue, I look for at least 20%. That's kind of my threshold, which is very high. But that's how I would kind of underwrite a market like that. And if those numbers work, great. But it's just very unlikely because of the factors that you mentioned in the really saturated, really expensive real estate markets.
What's going on in the Orlando market with regards to the parks? How's that traffic? Is that where a lot of your guests come from too? Disney World and all the other things that are in Orlando?
Yeah, so in Orlando, it's very there's kind of like two geographies. Anything south of like there's a road called Conroy Road. Anything south of there is like very touristy. Anything north of there is like very local. All of our properties are actually north of there. And so yes, we do piggyback off of the Disney traffic for sure. But like the properties that we're acquiring, like these four properties, the experiential kind of properties are in Claremont, Florida. So they're about 40 minutes from Disney. And they actually the reason that the seller picked that spot is the same reason that Disney picked this spot. It's just because of the weather. So he's made those into destinations in and of itself. And the year-round weather is great. So you get a lot of people that will come and just never even leave the property to go to Disney. I would say with our houses now, it's about half and half. Half people do, but a lot of times they don't want to be like stuck in the tourist area. They want a little bit more of a local experience, and usually they're here for something else besides just Disney. Like it's like they're going to a graduation, or they have a business conference, or they're visiting friends, or like we're right by one of our properties is right by the Amway Theater. So you've got like the Electric Daisy Carnival and a bunch of, concerts and games and that sort of thing that people will come and stay at. So I would say it's a mixed bag in terms of Disney.
Gotcha. And this is your main focus moving on. What are you seeing for the rest of the year, and what other opportunities are you seeing?
Yeah, that's something that I think about a lot, right? Especially we're making a really big acquisition here, and so we want to make sure like the economy is in a good space. And you never really know. The tariffs have really created like thrown a wrench in things. Now we're recording this on May 20th. I feel like we're kind of out of the weeds a little bit. We kind of see some clarity moving forward, and so it's like there's always one foot on the gas, one foot on the brakes. But like given the data that we see around like less listings, the fact that we've been able year over year, like our revenue is up from last year. So we have less supply, we have the same or increased demand, we're doing more revenue, and you've kind of got, what they want to have the onshoring of jobs, like American exceptionalism is what they're calling it. Obviously we can, there's going to be people who debate both sides of that. But the fact that the market has rallied so much, almost back to the all-time highs, despite all this craziness, I mean, I can't help but think like we're going to be entering into like a pretty strong economy. And so, especially if they drop rates, it seems like right now is a good time to continue to build something for the future. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I do feel bullish about this future. Like despite all this stuff that's been happening, I do feel like we're going to. There's some short-term roughness, but I think long-term, the economy is going to be okay. I think Wall Street is telling us that too, by how much money's been pouring back into the market. That's a leading indicator. So I look at all these things. And then even the fact that another factor is interest rates and their effect on the real estate markets. Well, we did a 22-fold increase in interest rates. That's insane. And in Orlando, houses dropped 1% from the peak for last year. Like that's nothing. And so I read a lot of articles about like how there's tons of supply, and that's true. And like we have pre-COVID inventory now, and we're getting back up close to 2008 inventory. Yeah, that's all because of interest rates. And so the question you have to ask yourself is like, do you think interest rates are going to go up or down from here? Because if they go down, then that's going to like relieve the pressure valve and allow real estate to start growing again. And so that's kind of how I think about it. The fact that like we've had such crazy high rate hikes and real estate hasn't just nosedived is insane. And the reason is because we just don't have the supply, So that's kind of why I'm bullish about all these things.
Yeah, I think if you zoom out, right, and you look at this big picture, because you have to, because if you just look at the stories, those are just all narratives. But I think there's a theme that's playing out right now, and this is how I look at it, is you've had, by the end of the Second World War, in the Bretton Woods, they had the Bretton Woods meeting up in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, and they had the Bretton Woods Agreement, which they established the new global monetary system, the U.S. dollar as the world reserve currency. They established trading, global trade, and that's actually, a lot of people might not even be familiar from the tariff stuff. That's actually where all this stuff comes from, because if you think about World War II, like Europe was decimated, Asia decimated, most of the world except North America, and for let's just say more Southern Africa and Latin America was not bombed to pieces. And actually the United States was at that stage manufacturing all the weapons, clothes, food, and sending it over there. So there was a massive imbalance, which at that stage affected negotiated
global trade deals. And that's why things were the way that they were, not to get too like far in the weeds, just big picture. And I feel like right now things are completely out of whack again for many different reasons. And I feel like we're now in a process of all these things are being renegotiated. And if you've read The Art of the Deal, which is a book that every person on this planet should probably have read, maybe read it more than once, there's a lot of that going on right now. So it's almost like, you know, the good signs, as you mentioned, is Wall Street is positive about it. And from what I am seeing and what sources are telling me, there is a lot of money flooding in from Europe into the United States, because Europe is at the brink of basically falling over, all of those countries, right? The EU and so forth. That's why they need a war really, really bad. And they've really tried to get it done, but they just haven't kicked it off. So where does that leave us in the United States, you know, and South Africa and in the United States? Well, we're in a position where I think there's a lot of capital flows that's going to come here. And also, to your point, there's a lot of positive signs there that these negotiations, which is by no means done, it's just a starting point, is going to play out. But it looks like it's headed in the right direction. You know, if you think about it, if you're negotiating a property, you don't throw out like the price that you're going to buy the property at, like,
Right.
Oh, it's listed for 200. Oh, I'll give you 200 for it. Yeah, that's great. Let's make it. No, you know, and if you want to be really aggressive and you've read The Art of the Deal, you're going to lowball that. You're going to be, I'll give you 100,000 for it. Almost like, you know,
anchor a low price.
Completely throw them off.
Chaos.
Yes, create chaos, throw them off of balance, and then start negotiating. And what's as interesting too is there's a lot of people, a lot of countries that have just said, no, we're not negotiating. And it's kind of interesting. You're going to have like different trading blocks, which you already have, but it's going to be pretty obvious and clear that everybody's that's coming to the table and said, yeah, these things that have been in place since World War II, really, it's really not put the United States in a pretty good spot right now. We're going to have to renegotiate it. And other people that just say, no, we're not negotiating are going to be cut out of it, right?
Yeah, no. And I think what you said about the Bretton Woods things is very true. It's like the tariffs are in like a very outdated, they're coming from a very outdated worldview, or where we are in the world economy right now. And so it is overdue for that. Why nobody has done this or talked about it, I don't know. I am excited about how the fact that like it seems like we're kind of starting to make traction out of this, right? And I can see the market going to all-time highs by the end of the year, which is just good for everybody. But I'm not. There's some things I don't understand. Like for instance, you know, well, I understand the deportation of illegal immigrants, right? Like personally, I think if somebody wants to come and work for cheap, like, you know, their quality of life is increased. Like we're getting cheap labor. It's none of the jobs that we want to have as Americans. So like I say, that's one thing where I'm like, hey, bring them over, bring everybody over who wants to work. Obviously, we need to make sure they're working. But my point is that I do see an inflationary outcome, and I don't know how to address that yet. But like if you're getting cheap labor to go out of the country because you're deporting them, and we have tariffs on goods coming in, to me that does seem inflationary. Now, of course, like that is going to ultimately be good for the average American. Like the average American, their salary is going to come up. So I guess like everything is going, I see a situation where like the consumer has more money and we do have more inflation, but we'll be able to afford to balance that inflation. So I guess but the inflation part definitely still worries me, because that means rates are not going to come back down if that's the case, right? Like we might have these interest rates forever, you know, and that's kind of how we're underwriting our deals. We're not banking on a refinance on rates coming down and like being able to get them at a cheaper rate, maybe in like 4 years, you know, but like the deal has to pencil and it has to make sense with rates where they're at right now, without being able to ever rely on a lower interest rate to come and bail you out of your debt service payments.
Yeah. And I just want to make sure people caught this point, because that's a very good point. And this is not a political statement whatsoever. This is just, if you want to analyze an economy, what you were saying about too, from the low wage jobs, let's just say the cheap labor, which everybody's been a beneficiary of, right? That has a deflationary effect in a economy.
So regardless of where you stand on the issue, and this is not obviously what I'm trying to drill down to here. I'm looking at it. Hey, how does this play out in the economy? It is a deflationary issue. You take that away, and also now with the renegotiating tariffs and so forth, the American worker is no longer just going to compete directly with a worker in a different country that is, getting paid $2 an hour versus $20 an hour, which completely tilts the scales in the favor of the other worker, right? This has a more inflationary effect in the economy when you try to rebalance that stuff. So that's interesting too, because what is interest rates going to look like when you do have inflationary effects now, obviously directly impacting you. And for this purposes of this conversation, especially real estate, which is very sensitive to interest rates.
Yeah.
So,
The wild card, I think, is AI. So meaning if we look at inflation, AI is a very, very deflationary technology. And so there is a scenario where all of the cheap labor that we lose going back to their country is offset by AI doing it for even less than they would have done it, right? Maybe that's machine automation and actual robotics doing labor, hopefully soon, like fingers crossed, or just a lot of the other knowledge workers, right? So like that would be the argument to say like, yeah, we do see, because technology is inherently deflationary. I don't know if you follow Kathy Woods at ARC at all.
Yep.
But as we continue to have more technology, like that could be the strongest argument that I can see for like inflation going down and staying down despite tariffs and deportations or whatever you want to call them for illegal immigrants going back to their own countries. That could potentially help us to get lower interest rates, which is, my main concern is like, how do I get rates to drop? Because it is painful right now.
Yeah. No, good point. AI definitely. And I mean, like the stuff that I've seen too is now, especially in construction, real estate, home construction. And then also even like, trades like laying tile floors. It can be done just now by robotics.
Wow. I haven't seen that.
Yeah,
but that's industrial. That's like, that would have to be like a large property, right? Like you're not going to do that for a single family home. You're probably going massive.
It's starting with massive jobs. Yeah, it was like this machine laying tile on this floor, and obviously it starts there, and then it gets.
Yeah, and let's be honest, nobody wakes up as a kid and says, "Oh, I want to be a tile layer" at some point, right? Like these machines are not taking jobs that like are desirable. So like I'm not worried. I'm personally not worried about that at all. It's like better progress always enhances humanity. So I'm all for that, and that could be because I mean honestly, like the construction rates, the labor rates, the interest rates, it's unsustainable. Like we need something to be able to bring costs back down to like a sustainable level.
Yeah.
So that could be it.
Austin, we talk about business, we talk about investing, we talk about cash flow, and of course on the Cashflow Ninja with the American Ninja. One of the questions I always ask my first time guests, and it's got a lot to do with legacy and leaving a legacy and living it. But it's if you cannot pass on any money to future generations, and all you can pass on to them is 3 principles and values to build wealth, achieve happiness and success, living it pretty wide open. What would they be?
Yeah, I think that you got to have a purpose greater than yourself. So for me, I believe in God, and that's important to me is like serving Him and making sure that I'm generous with the things that I've been given. So, like working with Compassion International or the Underground Railroad of kids in need. So I think like having that greater purpose. And then you could almost say like the second part of that is generosity. Like I was just having this conversation the other day, but like, you're never going to feel like you have enough money, right? Like most people, even I would be willing to say even the richest men in the world feel like they need more money. And you're never going to feel like, oh, now I'm ready to give money away and be generous. It's a habit that you have to start early on in life. Like, I was lucky that my parents raised me to tithe 10% when I was in like middle school, but like it's less painful because of all of a sudden, like, so you say, when I make $10 million, yeah, I'll tithe $1 million, no problem. Well, when you actually go to write a $1 million check, like, I don't care how much money you have. Like, writing that $1 million check, it feels painful if you haven't built that habit and built that muscle. So I would say always be generous. And the third thing is have kids. We were talking about playing earlier with Ninja Warrior. Kids keep you playing, right? I think like that's by design to keep you in the moment. You have to settle down and focus. You can't be too future casted because when you've got a little baby who's just smiling and laughing, I mean, they're not worried about all the different things going around in the world. They're so present. They're so in the moment. They don't know any other way to be. that brings us into the moment. And there's just so much joy that comes from raising kids. So that would be my 3 pieces of advice.
Awesome. Where can my listeners follow you? Where can they get in touch? And where can they stay involved of all the many things that you're involved with? And you've got a fantastic podcast too. Where can they access that?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. The podcast is called Helping Healthcare Scale. We talk about healthcare organizations scaling and investments and, future casting and economics and stuff like that. And then, reach out to me on LinkedIn. So it's just Austin, like the city, hair like on your head. Yeah, try and be active on LinkedIn and post on there. Would love to connect.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Austin, and again, sharing your journey and your knowledge and providing so much value for all of my listeners and viewers.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you having me.
And thank you again for all of my listeners and my viewers for spending your most valuable resource, your time, once again with me on the show today. Everything Cashflow Ninja is at cashflowninja.com. Over 1,000 podcasts. We've got 4 books, reports, webinars, much, much more, all at cashflowninja.com. And don't forget to subscribe to the #1 newsletter in the alternative wealth strategy and alternative asset investing space, the Wealth Dojo. You can subscribe to the Wealth Dojo by going to cashflowninja.com/subscribe. Until next time, live infinitely. This presentation is for educational and informational purposes only. The information being presented and considered does not consider your particular financial objectives or situation, and it does not make personalized recommendations. This material is not intended to replace the advice of a qualified tax and legal advisor or other qualified professionals, and you should not use the information in place of a customized consultation with a licensed professional regarding your specific personal financial objectives, situation, and needs. We believe the information provided is reliable, but we do not guarantee its accuracy, timeliness, or completeness.